Although there are some who will never be won over to the idea of any electric vehicle, I've said before, and I will continue to say it because this has always been my stance really on electric vehicles, I couldn't care less about the environmental side, but I'm more than open to being wowed by a really cool piece of technology. It doesn't even have to be electric. That's not really that important to me. It could be hydrogen, could be rotary, could be turbine powered. I just like different thinking. And to me, this is a prime example of that. The IONIQ 5N shows that you don't have to be boring about this kind of stuff. If you were just in it for the environment, you don't need a performance car. This is for those who still want the fun factor. And aside from the Formula car, this is probably the vehicle which was the most up in the air in terms of wondering what it would be capable of. Now, I've seen some players disappointed by some functionality on the car that isn't quite there. You know, maybe the drift factor that it has in real life or the simulated manual gearbox. That kind of stuff, of course, isn't there. It would feel a bit unfair if you were doing it on one car and then didn't have those kind of extras and details that are on other vehicles, which they may happen to have. So I don't really have any fundamental issue there. But in terms of performance, well, this was, as I said in my review for 1.55, easily the standout car of this update. Yes, the Formula car is tremendously quick. Of course, I was looking forward to driving it, but this one more so I was looking forward to, and more so I was happy with. And the main reason why I was happy with it did not even have to do with how good it was. It is fantastic straight out of the box, and in fact it corners and performs and even stops way better than a 2.2 ton vehicle has any right to. At the same time though, the reason why I really love how they've portrayed this car, and it's almost unfair to compare this because of how badly the other ones are treated, is the comparison to Vision GTs. Vision GTs are becoming more and more so electric cars, more often than not, but you can't do anything to them. And in particular, when it comes to the lack of diff tuning, the lack of suspension tuning, you get caught in this endless cycle of electric hypercars, which feel like front-wheel drive cars, have ridiculous understeer, and just aren't really that useful. They have a point level that's far too high to be any good, and they end up being just a design study, in terms of visually speaking, 9 times out of 10. What could instantaneously change 99% of those problems would just be allowing us to tune those cars. To change some kind of settings on it would make all the difference. In the case of this car, well, of course it is still more limited than the comparable piston engine vehicle, for example, but even without diff tuning, it's already fantastic through corners. And the thing which really won me over, in addition to the crazy aero, which you can see it fitted with, very Pikes Peak style, is that you can drop the weight massively. You can also improve the power just a little bit when it comes to the ECU. And speaking actually to some very, very applicable news, which I talked about recently, of course, of Forza Horizon 5 coming to the PlayStation 5, that game, as well as a couple of other Forza titles, actually does a really good job of electric car modification. Of course, the top end speed is way overblown, as all of the cars in the game are, and as Gran Turismo used to be and still is to some degree, but you can do stuff like upgrading the motor, the battery pack, and that's just fun. You can even do that in TDU Solar Crown, but Gran Turismo really is lagging behind on EV tuning. And for many players, you probably don't care, but for those of us who do like them, well, if you're going to put it in the game, at least allow us to do something with it, which is why this car and the Tesla are probably the two key standouts, certainly in terms of usability. When you tune this thing up, you can drop 700 kilos out of it, which is a huge immediate difference, down from 2.2 tons to 1.5, then with even more power, nearly 700 horses, but, and here's the thing, in fully built form, such as the one that I'm driving here, going up against literal hypercars, AI, of course, but still, it's still below 700 points, on racing tyres, mind you, with everything upgraded as high as it can go. Now, of course, it's not going to be a cash cow anytime soon because of the disadvantage of the batteries, but any kind of event where you can use this, it is going to be the car to beat. The Tesla is already a fantastic choice. Wherever you can use it, the acceleration is ballistic. I will say the Tesla, I think, feels quicker than this one. I'm not sure, you'd have to do a comparison, which I haven't, but it feels quicker. This one, though, is way more fun. I also actually quite like the usually dumb-sounding fake exhaust kind of sound, which I believe this one has. It kind of sounds like a CVT transmission because it never actually changes gear in the game, but it's cool. It gives it a bit more personality rather than just that constant tyre and wind noise, which makes so many electric cars so boring. And I've driven and reviewed a couple of them in real life. I reviewed a Tesla P85 and a Jag I-Pace, and they were both interesting, but no sound. And that does get pretty boring pretty quick. Whereas if you compare that to the electric motorcycles, which I've reviewed on the channel in Beards and Bikes, the Energica EVA SS9 and the two different Zero models, models, the SRF and the SRS, those, particularly the Energica, because it's chain drive, makes loads of noise. It's got a lovely whine to it, which sounds so much more engaging and so much more interesting than just a totally silent drive. And it's these small, initially gimmicky things which really do make all the difference. These kind of synthetic manuals, which personally I find kind of dumb, but for those who enjoy it, sure, it's a cool idea. It's, to me, going that extra mile to make these cars more than just a kitchen appliance with a steering wheel. Make it something that you would actually want to own. Yes, it is, for the moment, the future. I'm always going to have a hard time jumping on the bandwagon though, because to me, when I look at the electric vehicle influx, all I see is diesel 2.0. Everyone get this, everyone get it. So this is the next thing, it's great, it's cheap, and then a few years down the line, well, it's not as good as we thought it was, and then starting to backtrack. Regardless of what happens with EVs though, it has brought about some really cool cars. Rimac, Aspark, this one, and of course in the world of bikes as well. So that's it for my thoughts on this one. It's a fantastic car to drive. You can definitely feel its weight in certain corners. Of course, that's always going to be the case. I love the fact that you have the overtake feature as well, and that can sometimes help actually on corner exiting because it tightens up the front end a bit, gives you a bit more understeer and stops that back end from kicking out quite as much. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I might do some kind of special project with it, maybe for the Pikes Peak version, such as what I'm driving here, but I haven't actually double checked the spec on the Pikes Peak version, so I'd have to see how close it is to that one. For now though, that's it for my thoughts on the IONIQ. Of course, I would love to hear yours down below. Vehicles like this will always divide opinion. I don't think that's necessarily even a bad thing to have the discussion, at least everyone's not on the same page. And of course, stick around tomorrow for my review of the Civic. For now though, thanks for watching.